Sri Radha Krishna Bhogavna Sam Radha Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Navadip Dham ki jai, Ganga Mai ki jai, Jamuna Mai ki jai, Guru Dwarka Dham ki jai, Swami the Bhakti ki jai, all glories to the all glories to the Thank you very much. Jai Radha Sri Radha Krishna Bhogavna Sam Radha Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Navadip Dham ki jai, Ganga Mai ki jai, Jamuna Mai ki jai, Guru Dwarka Dham ki jai, Swami the Bhakti ki jai, all glories to the all glories to the Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my respectful obeisances. All glories to his confounder Acharya Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Sri Guru and Guru.
Yeah.
I don't know why the students are not here today. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept me. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Okay, we can start. Om Jnanatimmirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Tale Swayam Rupasya Dadati Sapatantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurung Vaishnavangscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhan Vitanscha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nipinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanyavadi Paschatadeshatarine He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kantha Radha Kantha Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Rajanulambita Bhujo Kanakavadhato Sankirtanaika Pitaro Kamalaya Vishwambaro Dvijavaro Yugadharma Paro Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavataro Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya cha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. So thank you so much for joining up on the class. We're studying for Bhakti Vaibhava, Unit 9. And we are in Chapter 7 of Canto 3. And we will discuss text 38, right?
Yes, yep. Prabhuji, 38.
Yes.
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamukirayet. Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shishnita Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. 38. Purushasya cha samsthanam swarupam va parasya cha jnanam cha naigamam yattat guru shishya prayojanam. What are the truths regarding the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead? What are their identities? So there are some tattva regarding the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he wants to understand this Jiva Tattva. And he also wants to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead and understand their identities. What are the specific values in the knowledge in the Vedas? And what are the necessities of the spiritual master and his disciples? So very basic foundational questions. What are the specific values in the knowledge in the Vedas? So the knowledge in the Vedas, we can only conquer what is available, is called the Prasthanatraya, the Shruti, this free, conclusive books that explain the Vedas. And the Prasthanatraya, which is the Vedanta Sutra, the Upanishads, and Bhagavad Gita. They explain the conclusive truth of the Vedic literatures. Now, at this point in time now, we don't have much parampara for different Upasana Kand or Jnana Kand of the Vedas left. So there is some parampara for the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, right? So Vyasadeva, instead of going towards the Shruti, which is explaining the Jnana and the Upasana Kanda of the Vedas, he decided to use the Pancham Veda, the fifth Vedas, which is the Puranas. He decided to use the Puranas. So why? Because it was easier to explain the Tattva. Sometimes the Tattva is easily understood in the Vedic literatures. It is easily understood in the Vedic literatures. More readily available to understand the truth because the aphorism who explains it. Right? But because there's no parampara left there, so Vyasadeva decided to write another book which is superior to these three, which is Srimad Bhagavatam. So just an added point, he decided to write out of his own experience, Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kimba Pararishwara. He decided to write something far superior. So there, he's infused all the different tattvas in the narratives, right? All the tattva that is there needs to be known. He's put it in all the narratives. So what are the specific values in the knowledge in the Vedas and what are the necessities for the spiritual master and his disciples is in relationship to Vyasadev's own experience of writing Srimad Bhagavatam. These are not superfluous, that he's going to take us some other side. No. This is the experience, the samadhi, the realization of Vyasadeva that's coming in there. So he's laying down some context as to why this is being discussed, because there has been questions by Vidura to Maitreya. So Vyasadeva is using this. He could have just explained it himself because he understands this. He could have explained the truth regarding the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the identities. This would have been Shruti, direct explanation of Vedic principles and tattvas. But he is relating it to narrations, that's why it's Purana. And what are the necessities for the spiritual master and his disciples? He can also quote that from Rig Veda or so of sort, but he will illustrate it by examples. This is Puranic narrations. So let me just go through the purport and see what Prabhupada has said here. The living entities are servitors of the Lord who can accept all kinds of service for everyone. It is clearly declared in 529 that the Lord is a supreme enjoyer of the benefits of all sacrifices and penance. And this is the last verse in chapter 5 of the Gita. Bhoktaram Chagyatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Shuhidam Sarvabhutanam Gyattamam Shantim Richati. Prabhupada is paraphrasing this: supreme enjoyer of all sacrifice penances, proprietor and friend of all living entities. Okay, so that is his real identity. That is the Lord's real identity. Okay, therefore, when the living entity accepts this supreme proprietorship of the Lord and acts in that attitude, he resumes his real identity. So, but the living entity, only when he accepts the supreme proprietorship of the Lord that he gets situated in his real identity. Or the rest of the time, he's lost in his whereabouts. He can only understand his own real purpose, his own real identity in relationship to the identity of the Supreme Lord. That's why we study Bhagavatam, to understand Krishna. So we know who this person is we're trying to serve and how do we fit in that sambandha, that loving relationship. That's nice. Sambandha means nice relationship with the Supreme Lord. So he resumes his real identity. In order to elevate the living entity to the standard of knowledge, there is necessity of spiritual association. So my point is, why do we need that knowledge? Anyone? If someone asks you, why do we need that knowledge? How would we answer this?
I was going to ask that question to you, and you are asking me now. So I don't know. How do I answer it? Yeah, we know from theoretical knowledge, we're trying to come to the realization of it, that because the living entity is part and parcel of Krishna, as a part, it cannot understand its full identity without the understanding of the whole. So, but I'll appreciate if you go a little bit deeper.
Anyone else could say why we need this knowledge? Appreciate, Prabhu. Appreciate what you're saying. Anyone else?
Yes, Arikana.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
it helps us to know our real identity, that we are servitors of God.
Yes. Okay. And that's it?
Yes.
Well, we are given
that
senses, we are given body, so we are going to be acting. So we need to know so that we can act. And but why do we act? To have result. So do we want good result? Is anyone here doesn't want good result? We want good result. Do we want to act to get the good results? Yes. But how do you act properly if you don't have knowledge?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Do you appreciate that point first? Yeah. If you don't have proper knowledge, ponder on this. How do you act properly? And what result will you get? If you don't act properly, you don't get the right result. So the right result is to really understand the Supreme Personality of God and then establish that relationship. And to establish that relationship, we need to actually have the right procedure, the process. And therefore, this whole principle of Shastra is always understood in these three levels. The right knowledge avoids the corrupt society, avoids the corruption of human beings, avoids the corruption of devotees. And then the proper desire to act correctly and getting the right result. So it's sambandha, abhideya, and prayojan. Okay? So that's why we need the knowledge. Without the knowledge, how can we act? This is a sickness and the corruption of modern societies. Everyone knows, but they don't know, but they think they know. And they're dangerous because those who think that they know, but they don't know, very dangerous. And those who don't know that they don't know. Then they are awakened to the truth by the pure devotees. That's why the devotees do these things. Why do we want to, come and do these things? Us devotees, why do we want to do these things? Because the living entity is sleeping in the jail, and he finds no way of getting out. So then the pure devotee comes, he's banging on the railings, wake up, guys. Why wake up? Wake up because you can be freed. Oh, okay, I can be freed. All right, then I will wake up. Otherwise, you have no possibility of waking up, no possibility of being freed. Then why do you wake up? So we make your life in the jail inconvenient. You can't even rest. Because when you sleep in jail, you're in complete ignorance. So that's the process of jnana and bhakti related to jnana. The jnana just helps for the process of bhakti. It is not the aim. This is the real meaning of Shabdarth. It is not the real aim. The knowledge is not the aim, but the knowledge helps us to act properly. That's why he's asking these things. The necessity for the guru and shishya, and the necessity for establishing a relationship, because then we can act according to the guide and the leadership of the spiritual master, and we can follow. So, yes, so what was your question now? Madhuvan?
Okay, I just want to chip in that we, as an embodied living entity, we are born into ignorance. We forget even our past, everything, and tendencies to follow what is happening in our environment, which is material activities. So without this knowledge that is transcendental to even material knowledge, there's no way one can act properly and get the best results.
Yeah. Sometimes another equation to knowledge is austerity. Just like another equation to happiness is love. When love of Krishna automatically has happiness. So like Prabhupada said, chant Hare Krishna and be happy. So by chanting Hare Krishna, we're developing love for Krishna, we becomes happy. So happiness is kind of love. Similarly, knowledge is equal to austerity. So I want to impress upon you this point. Is unless you're prepared to actually make some austerity to study and give the hours and the time to wake up and study and give this couple of hours and put the phone off and the iPad off and the Wi-Fi's and the Wi-Fi's off, both, the wives can stay in their corner and the Wi-Fi can be turned off. We can't study, then there's no austerity, then the knowledge will not come. So to act properly, we need that knowledge.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, sir.
In the course of explanation, you mentioned that the knowledge is not very much important. It only takes us to be able to act properly, because the goal is to act properly. Now, in the pursuit of bhakti, do we at a point in time, in the level of advancement in pure devotional service, renounce or not renounce? Renunciation is not the word. Does knowledge goes into the background, or does it go away? I want to find the proper word.
It doesn't go away, it increases.
Yeah.
The knowledge increases, but it increases as a servant of bhakti.
Okay. So, because I'm trying to clarify the point you made in regards to as not much of importance.
Yeah, it stays as just like Vairagya. If we become very Vairagi, we become very detached and we become proud of Vairagya, then that becomes a counterproductive path, a counterproductive element in the path of bhakti. So similarly, knowledge also, if the knowledge becomes a little bit of the aim and the goal, then this is not Uttama Bhakti. Because Uttama Bhakti has to be free from Jnana and Vairagya.
Mishra.
Yeah?
Understood.
Okay. So the bona fide spiritual master desires that his disciples know the process of rendering transcendental service to the Lord. So knowing the process is jnana. This is jnana. What is know? Know means jnana. And the disciples also know that they have to learn about the eternal relationship between God and the living entity from a self-realized soul. So we learn from the experience of the devotee in relationship to Shastra. Everything is based on Shastra, but it is a lived experience of the pure devotee, right? It is not the experience of the devotee is not in experience, is not in knowledge, but his experience in understanding the absolute truth, the supreme reality. He has that understanding. He has that vision. He has that pratyaksha. He has that direct vision of God. So we learn from him because he has seen the truth. Upadekshanti te jnanam, jnaninas tattvadarshina. Upadekshanti te jnanam means he has seen the truth. That is not an understatement. This is not a, he has seen the truth means he has seen the truth. He has personal experience. This is called vijnana. Right? So we learn from the self-realized soul, the spiritual master, who has seen the truth. So to disseminate transcendental knowledge, this is where the point of austerity comes in. You have to retire from mundane activities on the strength of enlightenment in knowledge in terms of Vedic wisdom. So retirement from materialistic activities means, not doing the things that the mind presents to you on a slate, on the screen of the mind. You remove yourself from those activities and you do those activities that will enhance the process of devotional service or bhakti. So on the strength of enlightenment in terms knowledge, in terms of Vedic wisdom, that is the sum and substance of all the questions in this verse. Yeah? Okay. 39. Nimitani cha tasyeha proktani anagasurivi svato jnanam kuto pumsang bhaktir vairagyam evavi. Evava. Spotless devotees of the Lord have mentioned the source of such knowledge. How could one have knowledge of devotional service? How could one have knowledge of devotional service and detachment without the help of such devotees? So Vitura's questions are very interesting. Now he is saying that I have confidence in you, and he presents it as from 39. And mentioning in general terms, spotless devotees of the Lord have mentioned the source of such knowledge. How could one have knowledge of devotional service and detachment without the help of such devotees? So this is very, very deep and very instructive also. So why couldn't we just get it from Shastra? Why couldn't we just take it from Shastra? This is where you will understand the incredible importance of studying together in class, because it is there in Shastra. So you can go and read it and get it. No, because there is a particular manner to which this could be obtained. Is this knowledge of devotional service and detachment is only available when you're actually studying with the help of devotees, or if you neglect that, then it becomes tedious, because there's a very process in which this is obtained. So this knowledge of devotional service and detachment here is talking about in the line of bhakti. The ekatva, those who are pursuing impersonal liberation, They're not interested in anything. They just can get rid of all their attachment to this material world. Just get me the heck out of here. Get me the heck out of this material world. And to do what? Just get me the heck out of here. That's a jnani. I want peace. I'm tired of all this. To do what? Doesn't matter. I just want to be in some other atmosphere. Right? So they don't have much desire for developing any kind of relationship. So their knowledge is what you call speculative knowledge. As long as they can get out of the attachment of the material world. The jnanis, impersonalist jnanis. But the knowledge of devotional service and detachment from this material world is different. It's twofold. The detachment is obviously subservient to the practice of devotional service, and the knowledge is helping towards engagement in service, in bhakti. So it's a two-pronged understanding. So purport. There are many inexperienced persons who advocate self-realization without the help of the spiritual master. Right? They decry the necessity of the spiritual master and try themselves to take his place by propagating the theory that the spiritual master is not necessary. Srimad Bhagavatam, however, does not approve this viewpoint. Even the great transcendental scholar Vyasadeva had need of a spiritual master and under the instructions of his spiritual master. Narada, he prepared this sublime literature, Srimad Bhagavatam. Even Lord Chaitanya, although he's Krishna himself, accepted a spiritual master. Even Lord Krishna accepted a spiritual master, Sandipni Muni, in order to be enlightened. And all the acharyas and saints of the world had spiritual masters. So in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna accepted Lord Krishna as his spiritual master, although there was no necessity of such a formal declaration. So in all cases, there's no question about the necessity of accepting a spiritual master. The only stipulation that spiritual master should be a bona fide, the spiritual master must be in the proper chain of disciplic succession called the parampara system. So, Suris are great scholars, but they may not always be anaga or spotless. Anaga sometimes means sinless. The anaga Suri is one who is a pure devotee of the Lord. Those who are not pure devotees of the Lord or who want to be on an equal level with him are not anaga Suri. Pure devotees have prepared many books of knowledge on the basis of authorized scriptures. Srila Rupa Goswami and his assistants under the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu have all written various literatures for the guidance of prospective devotees. There, Prabhupada is making a plea that we are Rupanugas. We should understand what are the followers of Rupanuga. We have to understand Rupanuga. We are followers of Rupa Goswami. We are Rupanugas. We need to know what he was teaching to follow. There is this knowledge, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Nectar of Devotion, and his other books. So they have written various literatures for the guidance of prospective devotees. And anyone who is very serious about raising himself to the standard of a pure devotee of the Lord must take advantage of those literatures. Yep. So it is a very important thing in the devotee's life that he makes an effort in terms of an austerity to study Srila Prabhupada books. And when he can get more clarification sometimes of finer principles. Everything is in Prabhupada books, but you can also read the Acharya's books. So text 40. Etan me prichata prashnang harer karama vivitsaya bruhi me gyasya mitratvat ajayana ashtachakshushah. My dear sage, I have put all these questions before you with a view to knowing the pastimes of Hari. So he's put a lot of questions related to Tattva. Isn't it? living entities, Supreme Lord, what is the process, what do we learn, how do we learn? These are all things. But the main aim is I put all these questions before you with a view to knowing the pastimes of Hari. So just hearing the pastimes of Krishna, but without clear understanding of the tattva within. So he's embedding both together here. Because first, initially, he said, I want to learn about the living entities, their relationships, and so on and so forth. Now he's saying, I have put all these questions before you with a view to knowing the pastimes of Hari. Because if you do not want to know Krishna, then why do we want to read and study? Why do we want to be a devotee if we do not want to serve Krishna and to know Krishna? So he said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You are the friend of all, so kindly describe them for all those who have lost their vision. So we have lost our vision. Means we're not being cautious about what is prameya, what are important things for us to know. Right? So he's saying these are important things for us to know. These are knowable things. It's called prameya, and therefore you tell us about it. Okay. So Vidura put forward many varieties of questions with a view to understanding the principles of transcendental loving service of the Lord. As stated in Gita, devotional service to the Lord is one, and the mind of the devotee is not diverted to the many branches of uncertainties. So we want to increase our service and make sure our service is proper and can be accepted at the lotus feet of Krishna. And then we'll get the result of that seva, our love for God. But we have to understand that as this 241 is, you know what verse is that, right? Is Vyavasadmika Buddhi Ekeha Kurunandana Bahusakhayanantascha Buddhayo Vyavasayan. Right? When those whose minds are many branched, the resolute determination for devotional service does not take place. So we fix our mind to serving the lotus feet of Krishna, and everything else we are doing, the austerities we are putting it, the studies we are putting it, has to be with that one single-minded purpose. So Vidura's purpose was to be situated in that service of the Lord, wherein one merges undivertedly, means in the service of the Lord. He's not saying merging impersonally, but he claimed the friendship of Maitreya Muni, not because he was Maitreya Muni's son, but because Maitreya was actually the friend of all those who have lost their spiritual vision due to material influence. So the spiritual master is a friend of the living entity. He's a well-wisher. So Maitreya is acting as a friend of the well-wisher. Okay. So, all right. There's a problem with the connections. Everyone is coming and going. So any questions on this before we conclude this next two verses?
Not. The only thing that is coming to mind is a much reflective topic, because the emphasis here is about the importance of the spiritual master and hearing from the spiritual master. But the question that comes to mind most often times when this topic comes up is, for one who is lost his vision, how can he identify his spiritual master? Because in the previous last two texts, Prabhupada mentioned that one has to approach, but it's just that one has to approach the bona fide spiritual master. So one who is lost his vision, how does he identify his spiritual master? Who is bona fide?
Because the spiritual master, he creates a shraddha. He does that from the, just like he comes and knock on the jail bars. Because you're sleeping in the lap of Maya, so he comes. But also the arrangement of the material world is such that you will inquire at some point or the other. One has to inquire. Tato Brahma Jigyasa. One will inquire because things don't seem right. It seems I'm always looking out of place. I'm feeling out of place. I'm not quite all right in this situation. So naturally, there is that inquiry.
That is the impetus.
Because the living entity is looking for joy and looking for happiness. And because of this inclination of looking for joy and happiness, they can negatively see, or comparatively, or in response see that these things are not what I'm looking for. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so in summary, so can we say that until when the seeker's desire is pure, he may not necessarily get a pure spiritual master? That, in other words, our connection with a pure spiritual master is related to our level of purity also. If our desires are not pure, if our desires for material satisfaction, material happiness, so naturally we may not necessarily be able to get attracted to a pure spiritual master. Is that what it means?
Yeah, and this is generally your nature because of your samskaras, because of the nature that you're in, the prarabdha. The prarabdha means the total resultant of your fructifying karma now, say for example. So we have to wait for all these different things to finish before we can get, say for example, I'm born a Sudra. So because I'm born in the quality of the modes of nature that determines my quality to be in the mode of a Sudra. And this is due to my prarabdha karma. This is due to the fructifying karma that I'm given this birth in this situation. Right? So, but the thing is, with the pure devotee, he can give you another birth in this life. This is the interesting part. You see, you can leave off this life and then wait till the next life. Right? Where the prarabdha karma for which for the prarabdha karma means the fructified karma that is brought you into this life at this particular station in this life to finish, to be able to get another better life or better opportunity. You know, that's why the idea of initiation is second birth, because he can finish the fructifying effect of the karmas that brought you into this situation and give you a new leash of life, so to speak. Second birth. So you don't have to wait till the next birth.
So the verse Brahmananda Brahmite Kona Bhagavan Jiva comes into place in this.
Yeah.
That sometimes
even
one is not pure enough, sometimes the spiritual masters can break that cycle of previous karma and give one the fortune to be able to.
Yes, but if someone is still has sanskaras that give him a lot of trouble, then he might have to go through a change of perception and body. When I mean change of body, I mean change of perception.
Yeah.
So then you're born with a new set of, you know, those things that are kind of taken care of as a spiritual master, and you get another chance and you get a better life. So there's always a question of progress on this path. That's why Krishna says, Neha bikramona susti pratyavayo vidyate swalpam apiyasya dharmasya treyato mahoto bhayat. It will save you from the greatest danger, which is forgetting Krishna and being in an animal body or something. Right? So you can move forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
So text 41. Sarve vedasya yagyasya tapodhanani chanaga jivabhaya pradhanasya na kurvi Nakurviran Kalamapi, O spotless one, your answers to all these questions will grant you immunity from all material miseries. So the answers to all these questions, which is both tattva, understanding, and katha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So by understanding, we progress on the path of devotional service. And by the process of Krishna Katha, the conditioned soul becomes purified. Such charity is greater than all Vedic charities, sacrifices, penances, etc. So the spiritual master is playing the role of a charitable person in a way, will grant immunity. So grant means to give, right? So the spiritual master is giving freedom from all material misery. Sudurlabam Sadguru Devi Sishya Shantapahara. You know, there's a true spiritual master. He delivers the disciples from Shantapa, the threefold miseries of material existence. So what better charity is there? So that's why he's saying such charity is greater than all Vedic charities, sacrifices, and penances. Means giving out this knowledge and engaging. The thing is, that's why Prabhupada said the books. Why the books? Because the books contain the truth. So it gives people understanding of their true difficulties, their true identity, and also their true relationship with the Supreme Lord. So this is the greatest charity. It is greatest charity because it is even greater than Vedic charities, greater than sacrifices and penances. This Krishna Katha and this tattva, this understanding of reality, the absolute truth, giving this to someone is the greatest work of charity. Quite a statement by Pitura. And Prabhupada's purport is the highest perfectional work of charity is to give people in general immunity from existence of anxieties of material existence. This can be done only by performing activities in devotional service to the Lord. Such knowledge is incomparable. Cultivation of the knowledge in the Vedas, performance of sacrifice, and distribution of munificent charities altogether cannot form even a part of the immunity from the pangs of material existence. So just knowledge in themselves and just doing sacrifices and just giving philanthropic work, charities, opening hospitals, giving this and that, cannot form even a part of the immunity. It doesn't give you immunity from material existence. It will give you a progress towards a less diseased life. You may end up in the heavenly planets where birth and death is not such a daily occurrence. There's much birth there and much less death and birth in the heavenly planets. So you have a higher standard, okay. But there's no immunity from it. That's what Prabhupada is saying. So all these cultivation of knowledge of the Vedas, performance of sacrifices, and distribution of munificent charities, they all will fall into the category of fruitive activities. Because Prabhupada is saying they cannot form even a part of the immunity from the pangs of material existence that can be gained by devotional service. Devotional service can actually free you from suffering. The charity of Maitreya not only will help Vidura, means giving out this knowledge, sitting down with the time and the energy and giving out these interesting principles of understanding how devotional service is so important. Krishna Katha is so sweet. But due to its universal nature, will deliver all others in all times. So these things said and done are eternally there for everyone's benefit. So thus, be eternally there for everyone's benefit. So therefore, whatever Maitreya Muni has said, whatever Srila Prabhupada has said, whatever the pure devotees have said and have explained, makes them immortal. So he reasons ill who says a Vaishnava dies. Because a Vaishnava died to live, and while living, he propagates the glories of the holy name. Right? So therefore he's immortal. So Maitreya is immortal. Prabhupada is immortal. The Vaishnavas who preach the glories of the name, they're immortal. Okay. Very good.
Good. Good.
All right. So Shuka Uvacha. Saitam Aprista Puran. Saitam Aprista Purana Kalpa. Kuru Pradhanena Muni Pradhana. Pravritta Harsho Bhagavat Kathayang. Sanchoditastam Prahasan Nivaha. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, thus the chief of the sages, who was always enthusiastic about describing topics regarding the personality of Godhead. So the chief of the sages here is Maitreya. Now, there may be also sages who are not always enthusiastic about describing topics regarding the Supreme Lord. There may be also many devotees who don't do that. Many devotees, they are more Bhajananandis, the Goshtianandis. They are not so much involved in this propagation of these glories of the holy name. And there are others who are maybe less inclined, and some of them are very shy about this. But here, the qualification of Maitreya is very interesting. Maitreya Muni is very much enthusiastic about describing topics regarding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Began to narrate. He was a very enthusiastic preacher. He was an enthusiastic devotee. He had knowledge and he wanted to share. Therefore, Lord Sri Krishna, I advised Uddhava to tell Pitura that I was thinking about him and I thought that he should go and study with Maitreya. So he's a devotee who is personally recommended by the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna in the last instant of his pastimes on the earth. That's quite interesting, eh? You remember we had mentioned this? Yes? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So began to narrate the descriptive explanation of the Puranas, being so infused by Pitura. He was very much enlivened by speaking on the transcendental activities of the Lord. So great sages like Maitreya Muni are always very enthusiastic about describing the transcendental activities of the Lord. Maitreya Muni, being thus invited by Vidura to speak, appeared to be smiling because he actually felt transcendental bliss. So when you have devotees who are enthusiastic to hear and make the effort to really, the austerity to read, to study, and then come forward enthusiastically, then that's probably more important than the quality of the speaker. Because if people are not enthusiastic to learn and show some discipline in studying and really asking intelligent questions and giving your heart and your ear and the whole body to the process of Shravanam, then the Kirtanam becomes dull. The glorification becomes. So when we do give that transcendental desire into studying the pastimes of the Supreme Lord, these Puranic stories of Krishna and his devotees and his different incarnations in Srimad Bhagavatam, understanding Srimad Bhagavatam, then everyone benefits. And the persons who benefits the most are those who hears, and the second best would be those who ask questions, and the third is a speaker. So, where's Shalika? He's disappeared or he's his image has disappeared. I think Shalika, he has two existences, right? Virtual and real. Okay, so let us read this. So I would like to sort of make a point here in this chapter we just finished. This was mostly inquiries by Pitura. He inquired about the jivas and the ishwaras. Then Maitreya told him that there is a problem with misidentification, and that to be able to understand this properly, you have to take the process of bhakti. And he mentioned in text 12:14 that devotional service is a solution. Then Vidura shared his heartfelt realization in Maitreya, which we discussed yesterday. And then Vidura asked further inquiries. And in these further inquiries, one interesting exercise we were doing is we were relating all these inquiries to topics of the Srimad Bhagavatam. He asked about the Manus and Manvantaras. He asked about the different planets and situation, which is Thanam. He asked about the generation of different living beings, which is Visharga. Then he asked about the Guna Avatar, the pastimes of the Lord as Guna Avatar, and so on and so forth, right? And then today's the last section which we discussed, which was Vidura declared the confidence in Maitreya, because Maitreya is very enthusiastic to talk about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Leelas, and Vidura is very much inclined to understanding this. So this therefore ends our discussion on the chapter 7 of the third canto, Inquiries by Vidura. Okay? So we can embark on the next chapter. Anyone would like to ask any questions? Any notes you have, any realization or reflections or anything? Okay, so we move on to text 1 of chapter 8. So Maitreya, he starts his seva. And this chapter is manifestation of Brahma from Garbhodakshayi Vishnu. Maitreya uvacha satsevaniyo bhatapurvangso yallokapalo bhagavat pradhanaha babhuviteha jitakirtimanam pade pade nutanasas natu nayasya bhikshnam. The great sage Maitreya Muni said to Vidura, the royal dynasty of King Puru is worthy to serve the pure devotees because all the descendants of that family are devoted to the personality of Godhead. You are also born in that family. And it is wonderful that because of your attempt, the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are becoming newer and newer at every moment. So Vidura is naturally born in this dynasty of King Puru, descendant of Bharata, and so on. So now the Supreme Personality of Godhead has also had a role to play in this dynasty. So because the Supreme Personality of Godhead was very devoted to that family line, to the Kauravas, to the Pandavas. And Vidura is actually in that dynasty. So he said it's becoming sweeter talking to you about it. So the great sage Maitreya thanked Vidura and praised him by reference to his family glories. The Puru dynasty was full of devotees of the personality of Godhead and was therefore glorious because they are not attached to impersonal Brahman or the Paramatma realization, but were directly attached to Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. They were worthy to render service to the Lord and his pure devotees, because Vidura was one of the descendants of that family, naturally engaged in spreading wide the ever-new glories of the Lord. So Maitreya felt happy to have such glorious company as Vidura. He considered the company of Vidura most desirable because such association can accelerate one's dormant propensities for devotional life. So good speaker, good hearer, both important. Soham Rinam Shula Sukhaya Dukkham Mahadgatanang Viramaya Tasya Pravartaye Bhagavatam Puranam Yada Shakshat Bhagavan Rishibhyai. Let me now begin speaking on the Bhagavad Purana. Now, this is interesting. So, does that mean that the Bhagavad Purana so far has not been spoken before? No, it means that he is particularly talking about his line of speaking the Bhagavad Purana. Bhagavad Purana has been spoken many times by different speakers. So he's particularly laying another Sampradayic angle, Sampradaya or Parampara line, where the Srimad Bhagavatam is spoken. Okay? So he says, and it's very clearly said, Pravartaye Bhagavatam Puranam. So he said, I will be now speaking directly on the Bhagavad Purana, which was directly spoken to the great sages by the personality for the benefit of those who are entangled in extreme miseries for the sake of very little pleasure. So these are just generally mundane people or people involved in karma kanda, people involved in fruitive activities. For very little pleasure, they have to toil so hard. So this is the highest principle of the activities of the pure devotee. They give us impetus to go for a higher standard of life in spiritual connection with the Supreme Lord. So in the purport is a very interesting purport here. The sage Maitreya proposed to speak on Srimad Bhagavatam because it was specially compiled and traditionally comes down in the disciplic succession for the solution of all the problems of human society. Only one who is fortunate can have the opportunity to hear Srimad Bhagavatam in the association of pure devotees of the Lord. Under the spell of material energy, the living entities are entrapped in the bondage of many difficulties, simply for the sake of a little bit of material happiness. Tuchha sukham, very little happiness. They engage in fruitive activities, not knowing the implications, under the false impression that the body is a self. The living entity foolishly relate to so many false attachments. They think that they can engage with materialistic paraphernalia forever. This gross misconception of life is so strong that a person suffers continually, life after life, under the external energy of the Lord. If one comes in contact with the book Bhagavatam as well as the devotee Bhagavata, who knows of Bhagavatam, he is then such a fortunate man, gets out of the material entanglement. Therefore, Sri Maitreya Muni, after compassion for the suffering man of this world, proposes to speak on the Srimad Bhagavatam first and last. Asinam urvyam bhagavantam adyam sankarshanam devamakunta sattvam vivitsavas tattam ataparasya kumara mukhya munayo vapricham. Some time ago, being inquisitive to know, Sanat Kumar, the chief of the boy saints, accompanied by other great sages, inquired exactly like you about the truth regarding Vasudeva, the Supreme, from Lord Sankarshan, who is seated at the bottom of the universe. So there's an interesting point here that Sanat Kumara, the chief of the boy saints, whenever we talk about the Sanat Kumara, we'll talk to them about them together, but sometimes it is spoken as Sanat Kumar, but they're always together. Sanat Kumar is the chief of the 4 boys. So he, accompanied by great sages, he wanted to know about Lord Vasudeva. So therefore he approached Lord Sankarshan, who is seated at the bottom of the universe. So this is in clarification of the statement that the Lord spoke directly on the Srimad Bhagavatam. When and unto whom the Bhagavatam was spoken is explained herewith. Questions similar to those put forward by Pitura were asked by great sages like Sanat Kumar and Lord Sankarshan. The plenary expansion of the Supreme Lord Vasudeva answered them. So this is a start of the Rudra Sampradaya. Okay. Swameva dishnam bahumanayantam yadvasudeva bidam atmananti pratyagratasham bhujakosamishat unmilayantam vibudhodayayo. At the time, Lord Sankarshan was meditating upon his Supreme Lord, whom the learned esteem as Lord Vasudeva, but for the sake of advancement of the great learned sages, he slightly opened his lotus eyes and began to speak.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes.
Yeah, please, could you kindly explain a little bit about the Lord Sankarshan sitting at the bottom of the universe? I want some little clarification from that.
It's Lord Ananta. Next, no, Lord Ananta Shesh. Let me see.
Thank you.
Yes. That Lord Sankarshan that holds the universe. An expansion of Vasudeva, one of the Chaturvyuha.
Okay.
Okay. So
Yeah,
so
Prabhu,
Lord,
please. In your explanation, you mentioned also of the Rudra Sampradaya, whereas I was thinking of the Kumara Sampradaya.
oh yes, sorry.
Please?
Sorry. This is Kumara Sampradaya, not the Rudra
Okay.
Sampradaya. I meant Kumara Sampradaya. I was thinking Kumara Sampradaya, I said Rudra. No, it's Kumara Sampradaya. Thank you for reminding us. Yeah, the Kumara Sampradaya. Oh, where does Rudra come in? Yeah, Sankarshan. This is the Kumara Sampradaya. They heard directly from Lord Sankarshan. So at that time, Lord Sankarshan was meditating over the Supreme Lord, whom the learned esteem as Lord Vasudeva, but for the sake of advancement, for the great sages, he spoke to them. So we are now in text 5. Swadhurni uddhadri sujata kalaper upasprishantas charanopadhanam padmang yadarchanti yahi rajakanya sapremananavaribhirvavartha. The sages came from the highest planets down to the lower region through the water of the Ganges, and therefore the hair on their heads was wet. They touched the lotus feet of the Lord, which was worshipped with various paraphernalia by the daughters of the serpent king, but they desire good husbands. Yep. Okay. So the Ganges water flows directly from the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu, and its course runs from the highest planet of the universe down to the lowest. The sages came down from Satyaloka by taking advantage of the flowing water, a process of transformation made possible by the power of mystic yoga. So if a river flows thousands and thousands of miles, a perfect yogi can at once transport himself from one place to another, simply by dipping in its water, and he appears somewhere else. So the Ganges is the only celestial river which flows throughout the universe. So the great sages travel all over the universe by this sacred river. The statement that the hair was wet indicates that it was directly moistened by the water originating from the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu, the Ganges. Whoever touches the water of the Ganges to his head surely touches the lotus feet of the Lord directly and can become free from all effects of sinful acts. If after taking a bath in the Ganges or being washed of all sins, a man guards himself against committing further sinful acts, then certainly he is delivered. So taking bath in the Ganges does not stop us from committing further sins. It just purifies us of past sins. But one can still commit more sins. Generally, it's a process of atonement for certain Hindu people. They go in the Ganges, wash off their sins, and then go on with the normal routine of life. It's a little bit like the act of confession in Christendom. So here it's the act of bathing for clearing for praschita. But then again, they will go and do the same mistake. But if he again takes up sinful activities, his bath in the Ganges is as good as that of an elephant bath. All right? So an elephant goes into the water, gets a nice bath, and then goes out and spread all kinds of dust from the land on the body. So it's no value. It's very simple purport. Text 6. Muhur grananto vachasanuraga skhalat padena sakritani tagya kirita sahasramani pravikka pradyotito dhama pana sahasram. The 4 Kumaras headed by Sanat Kumar, who all knew the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, glorified the Lord in rhythmic accents with selected words full of affection and love. So the natural process, if you want to make some inquiry of someone, is say a few nice words of appreciation or prayer. And that's what the Sanat Kumar boys, they did. They approached Sankarshan, they offered nice prayers in Uttama Shloka and rhythmic accents. Okay. And then out of affection and love, then at that time, you know, Ananta, Lord Sankarshan, with his thousands of raised hoods, began to radiate an effulgence from the glowing stones on his head. So Lord Ananta was very pleased. So the Lord sometimes addressed as Uttama Shloka because he's worshipped with choice selection of verses or choice selection of words by the devotee. Okay? So text 7. Proktam khilaitad bhagavatamena bhagavat Proktam khilaitad bhagavatamena nivritta dharma bhiratayatena shanat kumaraya chachaha prishta sankhyayanayang gadrita vrataya. Lord Sankarshan thus spoke the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam to the great sage Kumara, who has already taken the vow of renunciation. Sanat Kumara is in turn then inquired by Sankhyana Muni. So Sanat Kumar, he you know, the 4 Kumaras have each different specializations. And in terms of Vairagya, Sanat Kumar is the topmost. Then one of them has Jnana, then another one has such and such things. I cannot remember. So Sanat Kumar also in his turn, the one inquired by Sankhayana Muni. So then later on, they had a disciple called Sankhya Muni, but there's not much information about that. We've looked before. So the Sankhya Muni then explained the Srimad Bhagavatam he had heard from Sankarshan. So Sanat Kumar, kind of his disciple, was Sankhya Muni, right? And the spiritual master of the Sanat Kumars is actually Lord Sankarshan. So this is the way of the Parampara system. Okay? So then in the text 8, he said, the great sage Sankhayana was the chief among the transcendentalists. And then he describing the glories of the Lord in terms of Srimad Bhagavatam, right? It so happened that the spiritual master of Maitreya Rishi, Parasara, and Brihaspati were friends. They both heard from Sankhya Muni. So you can say that the parampara of the Sanat Kumara was Sankarshan, Sanat Kumara, Sankhya Muni, and Parasara Muni. And then Maitreya Rishi, who heard from Parasara Muni. Just like in our case, it is Lord Sri Krishna, then Sri Brahmaji, then Sri Narad Muni, then Sri Vyasadeva, then Madhvacharya.
But
Is that clear?
Yeah, but I want you to explain a little this for us. We know that now we are hearing Maitreya is of the Kumara Sampradaya.
Yes.
And then he took knowledge from Parasara Muni.
Yes.
Now, Parasara Muni is the father of Vyasadeva.
The friend of Vyasadeva. Oh, yes,
Parasara
by the
Muni.
Parasara Muni, Maitreya Rishi, I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Parasara Muni is the father of Srila Vyasadeva.
Yes.
And he taught, Parasara Muni taught Vyasadeva and Maitreya.
All right.
How did it come that Vyasadeva now belongs to a different Sampradaya and
Because
Maitreya belongs
Vyasadeva's
to
spiritual master is Narad Muni.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah. Okay.
It's a bit like us and it's a bit like us and Gaudiya Math.
Yes. Yes.
Krishna.
So the great sage Parasara, as aforementioned, being so advised by the great sage Pulastya, spoke unto me the most. Oh, okay. So here there's another angle. The great sage Parasara, as aforementioned, being so advised by the great sage Pulastya, he spoke unto me the foremost of the Puranas. So actually, Maitreya Rishi, he heard from Pulastya Rishi. And Pulastya Rishi was advised by Parasara Muni to give this knowledge to Maitreya. So there's another link in between Parasara and Maitreya. There's Pulastya. Okay? Do you follow it?
Yeah.
Right. So unto me the foremost of the Puranas, Bhagavatam. I shall also describe this before you, my dear son, in terms of my hearing, because you are always my faithful follower. So
Then here comes. So can we identify Vidura of belonging to the Kumara Sampradaya since he's hearing from Maitreya?
But he is not a link in the parampara because he is not a spiritual master teacher.
Okay.
He's just a recipient of the knowledge. But then you see, in the olden times, the rishis, the sages, and the brahmanas were given that order to be the spiritual masters. Like you could say Arjuna was given the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, so Arjuna is our spiritual master. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Arjuna was a Kshatriya, and Vidura was more or less of the same caliber as Arjuna. Yeah?
Yeah. These are very intricate aspects of Vedic knowledge.
Yeah. We have one saint in this group which is very quiet today. Chitraputra is very quiet.
Yes. So I have to, sometimes I have to be quiet and listening. Yes. I have to be quiet and listen, because if you don't take care, the names which are coming out, you become a little bit confused. So because I'm also trying to deliberate it as you are discussing it, questions coming from different districts, so I digest it and put it down. So sometimes it is so. Can you forgive me? Hare Krishna, Prabhu, thank you.
Okay, so we will read the text 9. So the great sage Parasara, as aforementioned, being so advised by the sage Pulastya, spoke unto me the foremost of all Puranas of Bhagavatam. I shall also describe this before you, my dear son, in terms of my hearing, because you are also my faithful follower. So the great sage by the name of Pulastya, the father of all demoniac descendants. Once upon a time, Parasara began a sacrifice in which all the demons were to be burned to death, because his father had been killed and devoured by one of them. So the great sage Vashishta arrived at the sacrifice and requested Parasara to stop this deadly action. And because of Vashishta's position and respect in the community of sages, Parasara Muni could not deny the request. So Parasara, having stopped the sacrifice, Pulastya, the father of the demons, appreciated his Brahminical temperament, and having the blessings that in the future he would be a great speaker on the Vedic literatures called the Puranas. So he got the blessings because he was a Brahmana. So he will speak on the Puranas. So Pulastya Muni became a very important Puranic speaker of Puranas. So Parasara's action was appreciated by Pulastya because Parasara had forgiven the demons out of his Brahminical power of forgiveness. So Parasara was able to demolish all the demons in the sacrifice. But he considered demons are so made that they devour living creatures, men and animals. But why on that account should I withdraw my Brahminical qualification of forgiveness? Means that it is in their swabhava, it is in their nature to do what they are doing. It is the nature of the scorpion to sting you. It is the nature of the snake to be envious. So that doesn't mean that we have to not act according to our nature of shama, forgiveness, in a Brahminical field, in the Brahminical qualities. So as a great speaker of the Puranas, you follow this reasoning, right? So as a great speaker of the Puranas, Parasara first of all spoke on the Srimad Bhagavad Purana because it is the foremost of all Puranas. So Maitreya Muni desired to narrate the same Bhagavatam he had heard from Parasara. And Vidura was qualified to hear it because of his faithfulness and his following the instructions revived from superiors. Right? So Srimad Bhagavatam was being narrated from time immemorial by the disciplic succession, even before the time of Vyasadeva. So I think there must have been some queries in your heart here. Is how come, because Vyasadeva has not written it, but how come everyone else is speaking about it? Because Srimad Bhagavatam has been in history from time immemorial. Vyasadeva happened to actually put it down in writing. for the descendants of the age of Kali. You see, Vyasadeva is a writer. He writes things down. The others speak. So Bhagavatam is a beautiful story of the Supreme Lord. There's always pastimes of the Supreme Lord, and so many varieties of pastimes of the Supreme Lord. And in the other heavenly planets, Bhagavatam is existent in a different way, much larger, much bigger. So this is just only small portion of it. So Srimad Bhagavatam was narrated from the time immemorial, even before the time of Vyasadeva. The so-called historians calculate the Puranas to be only a few hundred years old, but factually the Puranas existed from time immemorial. So they just don't have these informations. So mundane philosophers, they think in terms of chronology, but they don't have all the historic evidence. Any questions? Any comments? Any reflections?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes.
My reflection was when you mentioned that yesterday was a writer, he put the Purans in writing. I think maybe for this age, because I think because of the effect of the Kali Yoga, we have shorter duration of life, short memory, and some other inabilities. But in the past, people were able to memorize better.
Yes,
and
of course.
they take longer time.
Yeah, and also the Bhagavatam exists in so many different ways. That's also important. It's not just the one format here. This is the one format here that's been written by Vyasadeva, taught to Sukadeva Goswami, spoken by Sukadeva Goswami. He is a speaker of this Bhagavatam study. Okay. Uddha plutam vishram idam tadhasid yad nidrayami litadrin namilayat ahindratalpe dishayana eko kritakshana swatmarato niriha. At the time when the free worlds were submerged in water. At the time when the free worlds were submerged in water, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu was alone, lying on his bedstead. The great snake, Ananta, and although he appeared to be in slumber in his own internal potency, free from the action of the external energy, his eyes were not completely closed. Now, Lord Vishnu is always half closed his eyes. The Lord eternally enjoying transcendental bliss by his internal potency, whereas external potency is suspended during the time of the dissolution of the cosmic manifestations. So this one little statement here is full of meaning in a sense that the Lord is a supreme enjoyer. The Lord here, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, is not doing something out of obligation and strain and, lying on the bed of snakes on a huge ocean. And, that doesn't look very, very nice, doesn't seem very comfortable, but the Lord is enjoying this because he is always happy. The Lord is in his constitutional position, is always enjoying, he's always in bliss. In the material world, we are always in suffering, the Lord is always in bliss. Because his transcendental bliss in his internal potency, that is his nature. It is his nature. You cannot take that away from him. He's always happy. He's always in bliss, in ecstasy, in ananda. That is the nature of the Lord. So don't think in otherwise. Otherwise, like, wow, this is such a strenuous, difficult, impossible thing to be Garbhodakshayi Vishnu. No, he's naturally in his blissful condition all the while. Text 11. Shanta sharirer pita bhutta shukshmaha kalatmikam shakti udira yanaha udira yanaho uvasatashmin shadile padesve yatha nalo daruni ruddhavirya. Just like the strength of the fire within the fuel wood, the Lord remained within the water of the dissolution, submerging all the living entities in their subtle bodies. He lay in the self invigorated energy called Kala. So the Garbhodakshayi Vishnu is there. He remained within the water of the dissolution. Why is it called water of dissolution? But it's not water of creation. Because it is both. It goes in cycle. At the night of Brahma, what happens to the living entities and the subtle bodies? They take refuge in him, in Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, within the shell of the universe, within the body of Lord Vishnu. That's what it is said here. Submerged all the living entities in the subtle bodies. He lay in the self-invigorated. So comes a night of Brahma. If there's dissolution, what happens to the living entities? You imagine, can you understand, imagine this, right? It's in a closed shell. It's at this point, all the living entities are confined to this one universe. Those who are destined for this one universe, they're in this one universe. Those who are destined for the other universe, they're in the other universes. And the other ones, and the millions of other universes, they all have their set jivas in them, going through the process of birth, death, old age, disease, going also through the process of manifestation and dissolution, according to the day and night of Lord Brahma. And they're within that for the full length of the period of 100 years of Lord Brahma, which is a very large number of Earth years, something 311 trillion years or something. So then what happens? Every day of Lord Brahma, there are dissolutions. And sometimes at the end of some manvantara, there is some partial dissolutions. And therefore, when there's a partial dissolution, there's a time of rest, so to speak, of the jivas. So they have to be laid to rest, so to speak, somewhere without manifestation. Like Krishna says in the Gita, they exist in the middle, then they exist in the beginning, then in the middle, and they're put to rest at the end, and the cycle continues. So after the free worlds, the upper, lower, and middle planetary system merged into the water of dissolution, right? The living entities of all free worlds remain in the subtle bodies by dint of the energy called Kala. So at this time, the Kala, the time, is there, which is a powerful energy of the Lord. So by the effect of that Kala, which is kind of in a state where it's waiting for regeneration of Visharga again, part of Visharga again, for Lord Brahma to give them bodies and so on. Right? So the gross bodies become unmanifest. In the dissolution, the gross bodies become unmanifest. Do you follow that? Because Lord Brahma is not creating. He's tired, he's gone to sleep at night. So there's no gross bodies and the karma and everything that has reached at that particular point of time, whatever status or level, is suspended, and it is gone into the body of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. The jivas, they're gone there. Thus, the material energy was not completely wound up. Of course, it is not completely wound up because it is still in the universe. A certain part of the upper planetary systems are still there. Lord Brahma is still there, right? Up to Maharlok. The dissolution is not complete. The upper parts of the planetary systems are not destroyed. The lower parts of the planetary systems are destroyed. And there is no heavenly planets. There's no Bhumandala, and there is no Bhuvarlok, and there is, of course, no lower planetary systems, and therefore no sthanam, no situation to maintain the jivas in this position. So therefore no gross bodies are manifest. So the subtle bodies existed, right? And they carry on existing. So with the mind, intelligence, and ego is still existing, the jivas are trapped in there and they're waiting. Thus the material energy was not completely wound up. That's what it means. Because the ego, the mind, intelligence, they were generated before. So thus the material energy was not completely wound up, and as is the case in the final dissolution of the material world. Is it clear? Right. Chatur yuganam chahtashamapsu swapan swayodiritaya swasatya kalakya sadita karma tantro lokan pittan dadrishe swadehe. The Lord lay down for 1,000 cycles of 4 yugas. 1,000 cycles of 4 yugas is equal to 1 kalpa, which is the night of Lord Brahma. So here the Lord lay down for 1,000 cycles of 4 yugas in his internal potency. And by his external energy, he appeared to be sleeping within the water. When the living entities were coming out for further development or their fruitive activities, actuated by the energy called Kala Shakti, he saw his transcendental body as bluish. So let's read this. In the Vishnu Purana, Kala Shakti is mentioned as a Vidya. The symptoms of the influence of Kala Shakti is that one has to work in the material world for fruitive result. It's like giving a race, just like time for a race. Everyone's lined up and okay, the race. So you go and work for some result. So fruitive workers are described in Gita as mudras or foolish. Such foolish living entities very enthusiastic to work for some temporary benefit within perpetual bondage. So one thinks himself very clever throughout his life, as he is able to leave behind him a great asset of wealth for his children. And to achieve this temporary benefit, he takes the risk of all sinful activities without knowledge that such activities will help him perpetually bound by the shackles of material bondage. Due to his polluted mentality and due to material sins, the aggregate combination of living entities appeared to be bluish, right? Bluish is kind of mode of ignorance. Bluish is kind of mode of ignorance here. And sometimes reddish is called mode of passion. And sometimes Lord Shiva appears as bluish reddish because of passion and ignorance. So due to this polluted mentality and due to the material sins, the aggregate combination of entities appear to be bluish. Such an impetus of activity for fruitive result is made possible by the creation of the eternal energy, external energy of the Lord, Kala. So Kala is the external energy of the Lord, right? Which actuates activities. Any reflections? Any comments? Tasyartha shukshma bhinivista drishter antargatori torajas Gunena kala gunagati navdha sushyam tadabhi jadanabhideshat. The subtle subject matter of creation on which the Lord's attention was fixed. The subtle subject matter of creation on which the Lord's attention was fixed was agitated by the material mode of passion, which allows creativity, right? Creation. And thus the subtle form of creation pierced through his abdomen. So the living entities in his body makes him bluish because of their, right, of the itchiness, of this angst of fruitive activities they want to do, right? So therefore, it's very interesting what he said here. What is this subtle subject matter of creation? The subtle subject matter of creation, what is it here? Anyone can say? What is this subtle subject matter of creation? No? It is the jivas with their desire for fruitive activities, which is actuated by the energy called Kala Shakti. Right? This is what causes the creation. First, this is subtle. So the subtle subject matter of creation on which the Lord's attention was fixed was agitated by the material mode of passion. So the desire for action of the jivas mixed with Kala Shakti and now comes in the mode of passion. Then things start to happen. Prakriti kriyamanani. Gunas do everything, right? And thus the subtle form of creation pierced through the Lord's abdomen. This is the birth of the lotus. No reaction to anyone. All right. Okay.
You know,
there
are some facts or truths that when they come, it just puts you in a kind of reflective mode. You just want to assimilate first. They react.
Yeah, I thought sleep. It's too interesting, no? It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's analytically hearing them gives a different mood from the theoretical, just hearing it in lectures or reading it just.
So then piercing through this sum total form of the fruitive activity, this sum total form of the fruitive activity of the living entities took the shape of the bud of the lotus flower. Now there you are. So first it comes as a subtle energy inside, and then it pierces through, then it forms a bud, and they are now in that bud. Right? So it grows. And the chief of the living entities is always Brahma. It is gone to sleep. Okay? So this is kind of, sometimes it's combined not a day of Brahma, it is like the right at the beginning. Right? Beginning of creation. Or sometimes it is like another day of Brahma. So sometimes the explanations get a little bit mixed. I wouldn't say confused. Bhagavatam is not confused, but it's just mixed. So we have to learn to see the one or the other. So the shape of the bud of the lotus flower generated from the personality of Vishnu, and by his supreme will, it illuminated everything. So it's not just the bud of lotus, because now there's darkness. there's absolute darkness. The Lord is lying in the Garbhodak ocean. There's absolute darkness, right? And the waters is very choppy. There's actually resulted winds really shaking the water, and the Lord is lying on that, on his bed of Ananta from the previous dissolution, right? And now this bud of lotus that will come out will dissipate the darkness from the last dissolution. Very interesting. And by this supreme will, it illuminated everything like the sun and dried the vast waters of devastation that was still persisting. Okay? Beautiful to imagine this. Talloka padmam saeva Vishnu pravivishatka sarva gunavabhasham tashvin swayam vedamayo vidata swayam bhuvam yam samvadanti shobhut. Into that universal lotus flower, Lord Vishnu personally entered as the super soul. And when it was thus impregnated with all the modes of material nature, right? The personality of Vedic wisdom, whom we call self-born, was generated. So this is the personality of self-born is Swayam Bhuvam, Yam Smavadanti Sobhut. Swayam Bhuvam is a name of Lord Brahma, the personality of Vedic wisdom. So this lotus flower, so one thing I cannot reconcile, if this is another day of Lord Brahma, Brahma is gone to sleep, he's not regenerated. But I have a little bit of difficulty reconciling these things. But often some of our teachers said that Lord Brahma, he just sheds his subtle body and takes another subtle body. He just shed. Now we will understand that a little bit later. Lord Brahma is perpetually sometimes shedding his, because he's just intelligence. He may be shedding some part of his body and taking on the body like this. Because he's not in terms of body like us. He's made of pure Vedic wisdom, right? So sometimes we will see that when he generates the species, right? We will understand that a little bit more, but just keep that in mind. If something is not clear, if you're imagining some things that's not so very clear at this point.
When we're referring to Brahma here, how do we reconcile that with a Jiva Atma becoming Lord Brahma? Because sometimes Lord Brahma, there is no position, there is no person for the position of Brahma. Lord Krishna takes that position, or sometimes the Jiva Atma comes in there. So how do we reconcile this with what we just said? Is a body of intelligence, is manifestation of pure Vedic knowledge, wisdom. So how do we reconcile that?
But it is still a body, no?
It's a body, but the personality
actuated by the modes of nature. Yeah. It may be sometimes an expansion of Garbhodakshai Vishnu.
So the personality and the should I say the position of Brahma now? I'm trying to reconcile both.
The position of Lord Brahma is defined by his service. Is defined by what he does in terms of function. But the personality, the body is defined by the function, but the personality inhabiting that body can be different living entities.
So what we're talking about now, is it the body of Brahma or the personality Brahma?
When we talk about one particular cycle, we talk about both, because there's one individual in that one body. But when we talk about different cycles of creations, and in a different cycle, that one Lord Brahma that was there, he may have been liberated. Then another person takes the position of the Lord Brahma. It's not the same individual who does that work. creation in, creation out, creation in, creation out is just one.
Thank you.
I would say day in, day out, but it's creation. Yeah.
Thank you. It's interesting.
So into that universal lotus flower, Lord Vishnu personally entered as a supreme, as a super soul. And when it was impregnated with the modes of nature, the personality of Vedic wisdom, whom we all call self-born, was generated. The lotus flower in the universal Virat form, or the gigantic form of the Lord in the material world, it becomes amalgamated. In the personality of Godhead Vishnu in his abdomen at the time of dissolution, and it becomes manifest at the time of creation. So we read that again. This lotus flower in the universal Virat form, or the gigantic form of the Lord in the material world, it becomes amalgamated. The lotus flower becomes amalgamated in the personality of Godhead Vishnu in his abdomen at the time of dissolution. And then it becomes manifest again at the time of creation. So it is not always there, because if the universal Virat form if the universal creation is dissolved, then there's no universal Virat form, which is like the subtle aspect of it. So this is due to Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, who enters into each of the universes. In this form is a sum total of all fruitive activities of the living entities. Which form? In the form of the lotus. The sum total of all the fruitive activities of the living entities conditioned by material nature. And the first of them, namely Brahma, who becomes a controller of the universe, is generated from this lotus flower. So all the living entities are there, and the first one, selected by Lord Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, is Lord Brahma. So the firstborn, so he's like the senior most living entity, the senior most person in the universe. So the firstborn living being, unlike all the others, has no material father, mother, and is self-born, Swayambhu. The rest of it, there will be fathers and mothers created by Visharga. So he goes to sleep with Narayan at the time of devastation. And when there is another creation, he's born in that way. From this description, we have the conception of three: the gross Virat form, the subtle Hiranyagarbha, and the creative force, Brahma. The gross Virat form is a system of planetary systems and everything that is need to be. The subtle Hiranyagarbha is the energy or the blueprint. And the material creative force is represented by Lord Brahma. So I would like to stop here. We will continue from text 16 on Wednesday. I would humbly ask the devotees to please read again what you studied. Quite an intense chapter. It's a manifestation of Lord Brahma.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Once again, we want to apologize for the inconsistency of the students in and out during the class. And
Not so bad.
I know this is, yeah, I know you tolerate us. so
At least we don't have this, light flickering and all of that, because it's most, it's like you're looking at a fixed screen and looking at devotees, listening or hearing and talking, and it's nice. It's, but at least we've resolved that problem we had in the first time, which was impossible for everyone. So thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for appreciating. So also, I think we may be ending this chapter on Wednesday.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. So let's devotees, let's all unmute.
Just one thing, Prabhuji, just one thing, just 1 minute.
Okay.
Is there anyone you have who can, because I'm just thinking, do you have someone who's going to do this next unit? What is resolved?
Yeah, I think Chaitanya Prema spoke with Kavi Kanapura before. Actually, we started these 2 units. So I spoke with him, but I think he's preparing for it. So
okay,
maybe
great.
Probably we can
because
continue.
I would like to get a break myself because I have some other, my courses are intense and I have to study another Sandarbha in the next month. So,
Okay.
and I have classes every day, Monday, Sunday to Sunday. I have classes just after that now. 4 o'clock, the classes start. So, so it will be Sunday to Sunday, and then we have some exams in February. So, you know, you take care of, you know, these, so he will do these 4 chapters.
Chapters 8 to
12.
12. Then
no, 8 to 11.
8 to 11. Then we start again from 11.
9 to 11, 9 to 12.
Yeah.
What we have to do is we have to fix number of sessions, so to speak. Try to cover at least I would not say 20 verses in 1 session. I would say 40 verses in 2 sessions, which is the same. Like sometimes, you know, I covered 16 verses in this 1 session, so I will catch up, and there's 33 verses, so we will just complete, you know, like this section. So so then I will be doing maybe, you know, 16 and 16, so so 33 verses, we finish it in 2 days, which is fine, right? So so please look into that, at least